Well, if you're wondering why it doesn't look like Hanoch is in Modi'in, there is a reason for that because, well, he's not. And, it's amazing, Hanoch, how you have such empathy for us that as we begin the book of Exodus, the time in which it talks about the Hebrews in exile, you would actually leave Canaan, the promised land, and come into exile with us so that you can be a part. And I mean, where more can you be exiled than where are you?
I'm in Nueva York, man. I'm in New
Yeah,
York City.
talk about exile. I mean, that's like being exiled in exile, right?
Well, if yous don't behave yourselves, you hear what I'm saying? And it's interesting because my daughter Ayala, the Mike Clayton fan club leader in Israel, she constantly criticizes me for saying y'all. She said, Abba, you're not from the South, you're from New York City. Technically, I'm from the Bronx. So when I'm around her, I say use, and it makes her even crazier. But anyway, so
Yeah,
yeah,
well, that's
Israel is about to, I'm
kind of a
sorry.
hobby of yours is making people crazy, and you do you have people in the house right there that are sleeping, so that's why we have the more subdued version of Hanoch today.
An extremely subdued version. Um, I've gotten about, I think, a total of about 5 hours sleep in the last 4 days.
Ah,
Um, because when it became apparent that Israel was going to declare the United States, among other countries, a red country. And by the way, don't be thinking Republicans and Democrats.
you know,
That's
I was
you know,
wondering if you were going to pick that up. That
yeah. I
someone on
thought
Facebook is going to say that's prophetic that Israel declares that America is now going to be Republican.
well, I am certain that former President Donald Trump will come out with a statement about that anytime soon. But he continues to just download about Israel. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But it was actually on Friday. I read a one of the people in Israel that's truly tuned in with the government said that by Tuesday the regulations were going to change and Israel was going to follow the unprecedented step of declaring America a no-fly country. So I went, changed my ticket, and flew out after midnight on Monday going into Tuesday going into Wednesday. In other words, where we are right now, you cannot fly from the United, you cannot, if you're an Israeli, you cannot go to the United States. People were writing me, hey, why don't you fly to Canada and then come down into the US? Canada is also on the no-fly list. And being a law-abiding citizen that I am,
Yeah.
I didn't
Well,
want to face the consequences of returning to Israel, having violated the law.
yeah, because
Anyway,
returning to Israel, having violated a law, is a good way to not return to Israel. They
well,
just, it's not like the southern border of the United States.
no,
Now, the
no.
question that's on a lot of people's minds, I know this, and I've already asked you and I knew the answer, but what about going back?
Okay, going back won't be a problem. Throughout this whole Corona, COVID up and down thing, Israelis have always come back. As of right now, I would be taken to one of I love this term, a Corona hotel, which is basically they want to incarcerate me. If the test comes negative, I then get to go back to Modi'in and I need to self-quarantine for 7 days. Or if God forbid it's positive, I'm in that hotel until I test negative, whatever. So it's a week of quarantine. But after 2 months in America, I think I might be up for a little total peace and quiet, even if it's in a little, and I'm joking about a cell. It's not a cell, I'm not going to be locked up, but it's, yeah. So it's kind of bizarre.
Well, just imagine it
Um,
this way: that since the whole COVID thing broke out for and tour guides have not been able to do any tour guiding, it would be the first time that the government actually gave you something in the last 2 years.
yeah, and just imagine what it is that they'd be giving. You know, quoting Milton Friedman, American economist, there is no such thing as a free lunch. In fact, after Avigdor Lieberman, our astute finance minister, came out with this statement saying tour guides and tour operators should find another profession, Naftali Bennett, our prime minister, and others kind of walked that one back.
Mm-hmm.
And they came up with a package of retraining, which, by the way, for all, I mean, and it sounds good, except for the fact of, why would I want to be a microwave repairman? Number one. Number two, to take any of these retraining courses, you have to give up forever being a tour guide.
Mm.
Now, remember, tour guides are licensed by the government. So it's not like you can say, well, yeah, give me training. I'll take a job for a year until tourism comes back, whatever it might be. It doesn't work that way.
Mm.
The other thing to remember is that in Israel, generally at 40 years old,
Mm-hmm.
you age out.
Yeah.
Most people who work in Israeli corporations retire at 50 or early 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Our generals are retired and going into something else afterwards. Mr. Hanoch remembers what 40 and 50 were like, sort of, but in other words, it's not a viable option for me. So here I am. If my dearest friends can't come to Israel, I'm going to come to them. Now, I was already thinking of planning to come back in June, July, but no one at this point could guess what the travel situation will be like.
That's gonna be strange anyway. And I mean, I'm just thinking about retraining Hanoch. It's taken so long to train you to begin with, to try to retrain you into something else. But when you come to Franklin, though, I would be glad to train you in things like leaf blowing, leaf raking, dog walking. I mean, we can get you a good start in this.
I appreciate that. In terms of dog walking, I do have my grand doggy Toffee here, gorgeous golden doodle, who just loves hanging out with me, and life goes on. But let's focus on something other than
so
let's
what's
see
happening in
who is
a
bigger personality. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I didn't hear.
Tell us what's going on in the other country there. In Israel.
Okay. Well, we have a brand new Air Force chief who has already said, hey, listen, if we need to attack Iran now, we can do that. Mm-hmm. We know clearly that whenever this really happens with Iran, Hezbollah and Lebanon will, open up, the floodgates. He and his predecessors have stated unequivocally that assuming that happens, they never say assuming. They always say when it happens,
Yeah.
that Israel will reduce Lebanon to the Stone Age.
Hmm.
This is no longer, because they have about 150,000 missiles, many with GPS guidance systems pointed at us. This is no joke. This isn't a couple of guys, riding a camel, with a big sword.
Yeah.
As America sadly found out in Iraq, as well as Afghanistan. But while we're talking about America, there is no one that loves the camera more than former President Donald Trump. And because this Israeli writer is writing this book for Trump about the Abraham Peace Accords, the Abraham Accords, parts of the interview keep coming out. So, we've covered that over the last few weeks. But recently, and he repeats things.
Mm-hmm.
You may have remembered that when he was president.
Yeah.
But he went on to say, until about 10 years ago, the Jews controlled Congress. And that was good. Okay. He said, now they don't. And evangelical Christians seem to love Israel more than American Jews do. Now, I can't blame him for that incredibly naive misconception.
Yeah.
Because obviously he doesn't watch the Israel updates. Why? I don't know. Because I would have explained to him what's going on with American Jews, but he doesn't want to hear. So that's the continual diarrhea of the mouth, and on and on, and positioning himself as this, and he said Israel would have been destroyed by Iran if it wasn't for him.
Okay. I can see it. I can just remember a couple of flaws with that scenario. Yes.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But anyway, so once again, tourism is on hold.
Yeah.
Frozen in space. No one can simply go to Israel. And we did have an interesting thing that came up the other day. South African Chief Rabbi Warren Goldstein came out criticizing Israel, saying that it was unfair for Jews. Now, of course, he uses the term diaspora,
Yeah.
which means the dispersion. That's a very sweet way of referring to the galut, the exile.
Yeah.
And he came out and said that Israel should make special accommodations to allow Jews from around the world to come into Israel. At a time, remember, when no one is coming in. No one is coming in. Now, I don't know Chief Rabbi Goldstein, but I got to tell you something, with all due respect. If you've chosen to make your life in Johannesburg or Cape Town or Durban or anywhere else in South Africa, that's your, what we call around these here parts, your BI business. That's your deal, not mine.
Mm-hmm.
Israel has no obligation. You have no obligation to Israel, Chief Rabbi Goldstein, Chief Rabbi of South Africa. No es mi problema. It's not my problem. Anyway, so it's yeah. Now, if there's anyone that deserves to be able to come to Israel first, in my humble opinion, it's you. Mike Clayton. There is not a single person that I know of with a greater heart and love for Israel. Now, the thing, and again, I cannot praise you fully in your presence. That's a Jewish thing,
Thank
you
you.
know. So I can only say some things, but it's an unconditional, unbridled love that you have for Israel. Both, a lot of people, I love Israel, but they love Israel. It's, as we say, al tanai, on condition of, this, I got to bring the gospel to the Jews, and I've got to this, or a mutual acquaintance of ours, a farmer in Tennessee that came over to me, and in his greatest, he's one of those people that speaks like, if you remember Mr. Haney on Green Acres? And he came over to me and he said, I'm supposed to be provoking you to jealousy. I mean, jealousy was like 9 syllables. Yeah. Now, first of all, as I learned from our dear friend of blessed memory, Frank Houts, the actual Greek translation is zealousness.
Yeah.
Provoke you to zealousness. But yeah, he's provoking me. Yeah, I mean, I people are just out of their minds. But
that thought, let's stop there for a second. That thought of jealousy versus zealousness. I remember teaching this message regarding that verse in Romans a number, 20 something years ago. And I had just come back from Israel. And I'm like trying to deal with the word at that time, because it's not really, I'm not seeing how this word is really making sense to me. And that caused me to look back and see the word zealousness, and how if we took that back to the Hebrew scriptures, that's one of your favorite people, of Pincus and various ones, the zealousness. And so, jealousy is kind of something that provokes someone. There's an envy involved, and the outcome is not really good, or
never.
Usually. But zealousness is something that if I provoke you to zealousness, then you're going to in turn up your commitment, which is going to provoke me to another level. And so it is kind of like, all boats rise in the harbor when the tide comes in. And,
Right.
and so that's the essence to me of the word. It's not something of, I'm trying to show you what you don't have. It's more like, if I show myself what I don't have, maybe someone else will want something more.
Yeah, it's people are so incredibly foolish without realizing, when I meet people who have sacrificed greatly to try as best they can to observe the Torah. I'm steering myself, which is not easy, towards the positive, upbeat element of this.
Mm-hmm.
People who've really tried. It inspires me. It inspires me not only to do more, as you're right, but also to appreciate what I have. To appreciate that I have the bracha, the blessing of living in Israel. That from, like when people will go to a supermarket and they'll strain their eyes trying to read what the ingredients are, just so they don't get, some of, this little piggy in their thing. And I can go to most supermarket chains in Israel, not all, but most, and buy anything in the store. Now, it doesn't mean that that's necessarily good for me, artificial, whatever, or sugar is kosher,
Yeah.
It doesn't mean
But
I should have a lot of it,
yeah, but in the
but
first days of learning Hebrew, you do run the risk of coming home with laundry detergent as opposed to sugar.
well, actually, it was the olden days in the 70s when there wasn't, the fancy pants marketing
Features.
and what appeared to be laundry detergent. When you poured it in, we doing, laundry in the bathtub. This is when I was a volunteer on a moshav, pruning mango trees and avocado trees
Ooh.
for 3 months. What an idiot. And I paid for it. Um, it's this yellow powder with green flecks in it. Could not figure out what the heck that was. Well, that's called chicken soup mix. I mean, it's obviously not real chicken. And those green flecks are parsley.
Okay.
But, to me, it's chicken soup. To you, it could be softener. You say potato, I say potato. In the end, it's all the same, right?
There you go. Well, I do have a special announcement for you, Hanoch, that something that's happening this weekend. So you know that we have a Shabbat service, Life Assembly, and
Yes.
somehow the church that we rent a building from right out behind the church, and which will be right next to where you're staying at the Franklin Bed and Breakfast. Um, they thought that, well, I mean, they can't, yeah, sure, they do that Jewish stuff, but they have to take the day off for December 25th. Well, I emailed them and said, no, we will be using the building, but to give great honor and respect to our Jewish brothers and sisters, the theme for our meal together will be Chinese food.
Here comes Santa Claus. Here comes Santa Claus. And the genesis, if you will, no pun intended, of the Jews eating Chinese food on Christmas is an American thing, particularly, like major cities like New York, simply because back in the day when I was a kid, the only places that would be open on Christmas would be Chinese restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this is not definitely not kosher, crab Cantonese, not even close, but this is what was open. That was back in the day where TV was, watching the Yule log burn.
Mm-hmm.
The world has changed. The world has changed. So yeah, I get to celebrate Christmas here in America, and I'll be here for New Year's Eve. Not in New York, I'll be elsewhere.
Yeah.
Still trying to figure out, where to go. And although I find that there are plenty of people who are more than happy to tell me where to go and how to get there. But it's not always in a positive light, Mike. I don't know what to say.
That's a different subject, but yeah, and I have used your to do my Hanoch Young imitation here.
Oh no.
Someone asked me the other day if I'm ready for Christmas, and I said I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
See, and how I was inspired that one time to say something so nice,
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea. I
We
have
don't
no
either,
idea. I
because
have
it's
no idea
totally, we
what
know that
supplements I took that day.
we know
No
that
idea.
it's totally outside of your personality. Yes.
So strange. But more than anything, as I, begin over the next few weeks sharing my messages with people, is I see tremendous opportunities now, tremendous optimism, because we can work together to get, if you will, pardon the expression, our houses in order. A few years ago, we were all focused on the global restoration, like national movements, international conferences, which are great. But in reality, what we're left with now is it has to be built upon the strength of our family units,
Mhm.
are congregational units. And what's interesting is how many people now belong to virtual congregations. As long as they're connected, that's what's important. And we can build that no matter what the regulations around the world are at any given moment. Here in New York, you've got people wearing masks in the street. I haven't seen that in Israel for over a year. But here in New York, it's a thing. Although, and on the subway, you know, you're especially supposed to wear, and I was on the subways yesterday, back in the city here, and there was one woman on the car that wasn't wearing it. Now, I'm certain her name was Karen. I could tell. And, you know, so I've already seen my first Karen in America. I don't know who Brandon is, but I'm going to be looking for him too as I travel around the US.
Yeah, that's a whole
But
subject there.
anyway,
well, I can tell you that you're going to be.
Speaking of,
let me give you this little bit of advice. The more you will be able to tell where you're at based upon mask wearing. We were just up in Virginia, of course, for Barry's 60th birthday party. And when we got closer to like Raleigh, Durham, and places like that, there was people wearing masks all over. So the more liberal of an area you are in, the more masks you are. You go to a conservative area and they look at you like you're crazy if you have one. So, you know, you're going to be able to figure that out pretty fast. Which is, in other words, when you come to my house, leave it in your suitcase.
Well, you know, the thing that's funny is I knew that I would be in certain locations where it's a thing here. So I brought regular masks. My robbing the stagecoach bandana, I thought if I went into a TD Bank in Manhattan, I would likely be shot. So I decided to leave those back in Israel. You know, I really, but there is nothing like going into an American supermarket. Oh, and in New York City, there are no supermarkets the size of what y'all have in most of America. So this is like, wow. I feel like that old movie with Robin Williams, Moscow on the Hudson, where I see all the different things and all the different cereals. I don't eat cereals, but the packages are really cool.
Well, just keep in mind, I want you to keep in mind that though there are numerous people leaving those supermarkets without paying for things, you should actually do so.
Oh, I thought that was, you know, we have a concept within halacha, within Jewish law, of minhag hamakom, the custom of the location. And I just thought that was like, that's what you do. So I picked out some corn muffins yesterday, and no, I'm only kidding.
Okay, well,
I did try to pay in shekels, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, that doesn't go over very well. So,
well, here's kind of a funny anecdote. So I was at Ben Gurion Airport, of course, and I wanted to buy some really nice wine to bring for my daughter Kira and Zach, and I got them on the phone, and they told me a specific type that they like that's not readily available here in the US, because just about everything is.
Yeah.
Phlegm, F-L-A-M. So I'm looking at one of the bottles. Here, I have it right here.
Christy, you get your notepad.
Okay. So, you know, phlegm. Now, I'm looking at it and I see the price on it, is $79.90. And I'm thinking 80 shekels for a bottle of wine. This is not such a good wine. And I have like, it's 50% off the second one. Say, yeah, I'll buy two. Prices are in dollars, man. Prices are in dollars. What can I
Okay,
tell you?
this is life of exile. This is what you got to get used to. Things are just not as they
Life in the
seem.
fast lane. Well,
Okay.
so right now I have no tooth over here,
Okay.
which is kind of good. And then where I had the periodontal work about 7 days ago, it's starting to hurt here. So I don't know. I'll be the toothless tour guide.
Yeah,
What can I tell you?
it's yeah, that's just you. You're just a problem looking for a place to happen, aren't you?
Yes. Well, speaking of problems looking for a place to happen, my government seems so disappointed that they can't get the American government, whoever they are, and I say whoever they are because Biden twice in the last 10 days has referred to Kamala Harris as President
Yeah.
Harris. So if he doesn't know, so I don't know if anyone said to him, "Hey Joe, if she's the president, what are you?" But let's not confuse him. So to get America in line with Iran is like to dream the impossible dream.
Yeah.
America realizes negotiations are going nowhere, but America does not have the political will to do anything
Yeah.
about it. So we're living in enormously fascinating times, but the problem is it's so easy to get distracted.
Yeah.
When in reality, now's the time that we will have to focus back on basics.
Good. Good word. Good word. Well, with that, hey, try to get some sleep. Take Tuffy out for a walk, and make sure that you pick up because you are in New York, so you have to go, behind and make sure everything's not left behind.
Yeah, but I got to tell you something. Yes, there is a pooper scooper lore here, but this is also the winter in Nueva York. There's a whole different character to that dog stuff.
Ah,
But we're not going to talk about that because this is a family-oriented show.
okay. Well, speaking of characters, please do not sit on anybody's lap that has a red suit. Okay.
Righty. I'll see you all in a few weeks.
All right.
See you
You got it, man.
soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.